Maya Collins sat at the back of the classroom, her notebook open and her pen moving steadily across the page. Around her, cadets from 12 different worlds filled the seats, their voices mixing in a dozen languages as they discussed the morning's tactical lesson. The Vorthak cadets, each standing nearly 8 feet tall with thick gray skin, gestured with massive hands as they debated strategy. The blue-skinned Zephyrians moved with quick bird-like motions, their large eyes darting between speakers. Near. The front 3 Mentari cadets sat perfectly still, their silver skin glowing faintly as they shared thoughts without speaking. Maya wrote down everything she observed. She noted how the Vorthak always chose direct attacks in their examples. She saw how the Zephyrians preferred hit-and-run tactics. She watched the Mentari work together like parts of a single mind. For 3 months, she had been watching and learning, but she rarely spoke. Cadet Collins. The voice cut through the noise like a blade. Drill Sergeant Crickstall stood at the front of the room, his forearms crossed over his chest. His scales caught the light, making him look like he was carved from dark metal. 2 yellow eyes fixed on Maya with the intensity of a predator. Perhaps you would like to share your thoughts on the Kepler station scenario? The room fell silent. 42 pairs of eyes turned to look at Maya. She felt the weight of their attention but kept her face calm. She had been expecting this moment for weeks. The defending force made 3 critical errors, she said, her voice quiet but clear. They spread their ships too thin across the outer perimeter. They failed to account for the asteroid field as cover for attacking forces. And they assumed the enemy would follow standard battle formations. Sergeant Crickstall's head tilted slightly. His species, the Thrakari, were known throughout the galaxy as master tacticians. For 30 years, he had trained the best military minds from dozens of worlds. Most cadets either gave textbook answers or stumbled through half-formed ideas. Maya's response was different. "Continue," he said. The attack succeeded because the enemy used the asteroids to mask their approach and concentrated their forces at the weakest point in the defense grid. If the defenders had pulled back to a tighter formation around the station itself, they could have used the station's weapons to support their ships. The enemy would have been caught between the defensive fleet and the station's firepower. Maya's voice never rose above a conversational tone, but every cadet in the room was listening. Even the Mentari had stopped their silent communication to focus on her words. "And what would you have done differently?" Crickstall asked. "I would have used the asteroids too," Maya said. "Hide half the defensive fleet in the field and let the enemy think they were using it for cover. When they committed to their attack, the hidden ships could have hit them from behind while the station and remaining ships engaged from the front." The sergeant's eyes narrowed. This human had just described a classic Thrakari pincer movement, but with a twist he had not considered. Using the enemy's own cover against them showed a level of tactical thinking that impressed him, though he would never admit it in front of the class. "Acceptable analysis," he said, which was high praise from Crickstall. "However, battlefield theory means nothing without the ability to execute. We shall see how well you perform when the stakes are real." Maya nodded once and looked down at her notebook. Around her, the other cadets exchanged glances. Some looked surprised. Others seemed annoyed that the quiet human had given such a thorough answer. A few, particularly the Vorthak cadets, appeared skeptical that someone so small could understand real combat. After class, Maya walked alone through the corridors of Nexus Prime. The massive space station served as both a diplomatic hub and the premier military academy for the United Worlds Defense Force. The hallways were wide enough to accommodate the largest species in the Alliance, and the ceilings rose high above her head. She felt tiny in comparison to the architecture, but she had learned not to let size intimidate her. "Hey, Collins." Maya turned to see 3 cadets approaching. The leader was Zareth, a hegemony warrior whose people were known for their pride and their skill in battle. She stood 6.5 feet tall, with reddish skin marked by ritual scars that showed her family's military history. Behind her were Jake Morrison, another human in Veltar, a Zephyrian whose blue feathers were marked with silver streaks that indicated his clan status. Nice show in there, Jake said, but his tone suggested he was not impressed. Trying to make the rest of us look bad? Maya studied his face. Jake had been one of the more vocal cadets since arriving at the academy. He seemed to believe that humans needed to prove themselves through aggression and loud confidence. His approach was the opposite of hers, and she could see it frustrated him that she received attention without following his methods, I answered. A question, Maya said simply. You showed off, Zareth said, stepping closer. You think because you can quote textbooks you understand war? My people have been fighting for 1,000 years. We know what real combat looks like. Maya looked up at the taller alien. Zareth's species was naturally stronger and faster than humans. Their bones were denser, their muscles more efficient. In a straight fight, Maya knew she would have significant disadvantages. But she also knew that Zareth's people had a tendency to rely on their natural advantages rather than developing complex strategies. I think everyone here has something to learn, Maya said. Even from someone who never speaks up? Veltar asked. His voice had the musical quality common to his species, but there was mockery in his tone. You sit in the back, you avoid the group exercises, you barely participate in combat training. Maybe you should not be here. Maya felt the familiar weight of doubt that had followed her since childhood. She was smaller than most humans, quieter than most people expected, and she preferred to think before acting. These traits had served her well in her studies, but they seemed like weaknesses in a military environment that valued quick decisions and aggressive action. Maybe, she said, but I am here and I intend to graduate, Jake laughed. Good luck with that. Wait until we get to the real training. Book learning won't help you when you're face to face with something that wants to kill you. The three cadets walked away, their conversation shifting to plans for the evening meal. Maya stood alone in the corridor, watching them go. She had heard similar comments many times over the past 3 months. Her instructors were polite but clearly uncertain about her potential. Her fellow cadets ranged from indifferent to openly dismissive. Even other humans seemed to think she was too quiet, too cautious, too different from what they expected a soldier to be. Maya continued walking toward her quarters. She had work to do before the evening meal. Her desk was covered with files she had requested from the Academy's database. Each file contained detailed information about the species represented in her class. She studied their biology, their psychology, their military traditions, and their historical conflicts. She memorized their strengths and their weaknesses, their fighting styles and their blind spots, while other cadets spent their free time socializing or competing in recreational activities. Maya read and planned. She practiced combat forms designed specifically to work against larger, stronger opponents. She studied videos of battles throughout galactic history, analyzing how smaller forces had defeated larger ones through superior tactics and preparation. The other cadets saw her silence as weakness or fear. They assumed her small size and quiet nature meant she was not suited for military life. Maya let them think what they wanted. She had learned long ago that being underestimated could be an advantage. People who expected nothing from her were often surprised by what she could accomplish. As she reached her quarters, Maya reflected on Sergeant Crickstall's words about stakes being real. She knew that advanced training would push all the cadets beyond their comfort zones. Some would prove themselves capable of handling the pressure. Others would discover that they were not cut out for military service. Maya intended to be among those who succeeded, regardless of what anyone else expected, from the quiet human who sat in the back and took notes. The training hall echoed with the sound of heavy footsteps and labored breathing. Sergeant Crickstall stood on a raised platform, watching 42 cadets run through the obstacle course he had designed to test their limits. The course stretched across the entire length of the hall, featuring climbing walls, balance beams, rope swings, and weighted carries that would challenge even the strongest species. "Move faster, Cadet Morrison," Crickstall called out as Jake struggled with a rope. "Climb." The human was breathing hard, his face red with effort. "Your enemies will not wait for you to catch your breath." Maya ran steadily through the course, her movements efficient rather than powerful. She could not match the raw speed of the Zephyrians, or the brute strength of the Vorthek, but she maintained a consistent pace that carried her through each obstacle without wasting energy. While other cadets rushed at barriers and exhausted themselves, Maya used technique and timing to overcome challenges. At the weighted carry station, each cadet had to transport a series of metal blocks across a 30-meter stretch. The blocks were designed to be challenging for each species. For Vorthek cadets, the blocks weighed 200 kilograms each. For humans, they weighed 80 kilograms. Maya lifted her first block and began walking, her back straight and her steps measured. "Look at the human," Zareth said to her training partner, loud enough for others to hear. "She moves like an old person afraid of falling down." "How will she carry wounded soldiers in battle if she can barely manage training weights?" Several cadets laughed. Maya heard the comment but did not respond. She completed her carry, set down the weight, and returned for the second block. By the time she finished the exercise, her form was still perfect, while many of the cadets who had started faster were struggling with their final repetitions. Crystal made notes on his tablet. He had been observing Maya for weeks, trying to understand this peculiar human. She never complained, never made excuses, and never failed to complete an exercise. Yet she also never stood out in ways that impressed other cadets. She was competent but not exceptional, steady but not inspiring. The sergeant found himself curious about what would happen when she faced real pressure. "Attention," Crystal called out. "Tomorrow we begin Phase 2 training. You will be tested in actual combat scenarios. Some of you will discover that classroom knowledge and training hall exercises are very different from real fighting. Some of you may decide that military service is not your calling." The cadets formed up in their usual formation. Maya took her place in the back row, as she always did. Around her, the other cadets whispered excitedly about the upcoming challenges. Combat training was what many of them had been waiting for since arriving at the academy. "Phase 2 will take place in a controlled environment, but the dangers will be real," the sergeant continued. "You will face opponents who are trying to defeat you. You will need to work as teams, and you will learn whether you have what it takes to protect your fellow soldiers and complete your mission." After dismissal, Maya walked to the academy's library. The massive space contained physical books, digital archives, and holographic displays from hundreds of worlds. She found her usual spot in a quiet corner and opened her research files. Tonight she was studying hegemony combat doctrine, trying to understand the cultural factors that influenced how Zareth and her people approached warfare. "Still reading?" Maya looked up to see Lisa Park, one of the few cadets who had ever spoken to her in a friendly way. Lisa was Korean American, a pilot trainee whose test scores ranked in the top 5% of her class. Unlike Jake Morrison, she seemed genuinely curious about Maya rather than threatened by her. "Always something new to learn," Maya said, closing the file. "How was flight simulation today?" "Challenging. They had us running intercept patterns against manted raiders." "Those things are fast." Lisa sat down across from Maya. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why do you stay so quiet in group discussions? I have read your test scores. You know this material better than almost anyone, but you let other people talk while you just listen." Maya considered the question. She had been asked variations of it throughout her life, by teachers, by family members, and now by fellow cadets. Most people seemed to believe that knowledge should be displayed loudly and confidently. Maya had learned that there were advantages to keeping her thoughts private until the right moment. "I learn more by listening than by talking," she said. "And people tell you things when they think you are not paying attention." "Like what?" "Like how Zareth gets angry when someone questions her plans, which means she might make mistakes if you can make her mad during a fight, or how the Mentari cadets always pause for exactly 2 seconds before responding to unexpected situations, which could be exploited in combat. Or how Jake Morrison always goes for headshots in simulation because he thinks they look more impressive, even when body shots would be more effective. Lisa stared at her. "You have been cataloging everyone's weaknesses?" "And strengths," Maya said. "Everyone here is good at something." I want to understand what that is. That is actually kind of scary. Maya smiled slightly. Knowledge is just information. What you do with it matters more than having it. The next morning brought the first Phase 2 exercise. The cadets gathered in a large training room that had been modified to simulate an urban combat environment. Walls, barriers, and obstacles created a maze-like layout with multiple levels and hiding spots. Each cadet was equipped with training, weapons that fired energy pulses instead of projectiles. Getting hit would disable the weapon and eliminate the cadet from the exercise. You will work in teams of 6, Sergeant Crystal announced. Your mission is to capture and hold the central objective for 10 minutes while other teams try to take it from you. The team that controls the objective when time expires wins. Maya found herself assigned to a team with Zareth, Jake Morrison, Veltar the Zephyrion, and 2 other cadets she barely knew. Marcus Webb was a human from the Mars colonies, quiet like Maya, but in a nervous way rather than a thoughtful one. Keth Volume was a young Vorthek who seemed eager to prove himself worthy of his people's warrior reputation. All right, team. Saad automatically assuming leadership. This should be simple. We rush the center, take the objective, and hold it. Keth Volume and I will lead the charge. Zaret, H can cover our right flank. The rest of you support us? Maya studied the layout of the training area. The central objective was located in an open courtyard surrounded by buildings and elevated positions. Any team that tried to hold it would be exposed to attack from multiple directions. The direct approach Jake suggested would likely result in their quick elimination. What if we do not go to the center first? Maya asked. What do you mean? Zareth demanded. If everyone rushes the objective, there will be a big fight there. We could let other teams eliminate each other, then move in when they are weakened. Jake shook his head. That is coward thinking. We are warriors, not sneaks. Tactics are not cowardice, Maya said. They are how smaller forces defeat larger ones. You think we need tricks because we are weak? Keth Volume asked. His voice carried the offense that Vorthak felt when their strength was questioned. Maya looked around the team. She could see that they had already decided to dismiss her suggestion. Jake wanted to prove himself through aggressive action. Zareth and Keth Volume saw direct confrontation as a matter of honor. Veltar seemed content to follow whatever plan the stronger personalities chose. Only Marcus appeared uncertain, but he was too nervous to voice his thoughts. No tricks, Maya said. Just thinking ahead. The exercise began with a loud signal. Jake immediately led the team toward the center of the training area, moving fast and making noise. Maya followed, but she kept her weapon ready and her eyes on the surrounding buildings. She had a bad feeling about their approach. They were halfway to the objective when energy pulses began hitting the ground around them. 3 other teams had reached elevated positions and were firing down at anyone in the open. Jake cursed and dove for cover behind a low wall. The rest of the team scattered to different positions. See, Maya called out to Jake. Everyone had the same idea you did. Shut up and fight, Jake shot back, returning fire at targets he could. Barely see, the battle turned into exactly what Maya had predicted, a chaotic fight with multiple teams, shooting at each other from different positions. Their team was pinned down in the open while better-positioned opponents picked them off one by one. Marcus was eliminated first, caught in crossfire between 2 other teams. Veltar fell next when he tried to advance to a better position. Maya crouched behind her cover and watched the patterns of enemy fire. She began to see openings, moments when the shooters were reloading or shifting targets. She also noticed that one of the teams was running low on members and would soon be forced to retreat. Jake, she called out. Team 3 is about to pull back from the east building. If we move now, we can take their position. I am not taking orders from you, Jake replied, but his voice carried less confidence than before. Maya made her decision. She sprinted from her cover toward the east building, using the distraction of ongoing firefights to mask her movement. She reached the building just as the last member of Team 3 was climbing down from the 2nd floor. The transport ship shuddered as it entered the atmosphere of Kalos. Maya gripped her seat harness and looked out the small window at the jungle world below. Dense green canopy stretched to the horizon, broken only by rivers that wound through. The landscape like silver ribbons? The planet looked peaceful from orbit, but Maya knew better. She had read the briefing files 3 times. Kalos the Seventh was home to predators. That had evolved in complete isolation for millions of years. The planet's gravity was 15% higher than Earth's standard. The humidity stayed near 90%. Year-round. The local fauna included creatures that could track prey across kilometers and others that could tear through standard body armor with their claws. It was the perfect place to test military cadets under real pressure. Nervous? Lisa Park asked from the seat next to Maya. The pilot trainee had been assigned to Maya's squad for the field exercise, along with 4 other cadets. Prepared, Maya replied. She had spent the past week studying everything available about Kalos. 7. She knew which plants were edible, which animals were dangerous, and how to find fresh water. More importantly, she had memorized the locations where previous training exercises had encountered problems. Sergeant Crickstal stood at the front of the transport, his 4 arms braced against the ceiling as the ship bounced through atmospheric. Turbulence! Listen carefully, he called out. You will have 72 hours to complete your objectives. Each squad has different goals, but all require you to work together. Some of you will discover that teamwork is harder than you expected. Others will learn that survival depends on more than individual strength. Maya's squad consisted of herself, Lisa, Zarath, Marcus Webb, and 2 aliens she had observed but never worked with directly. Nixara was a mantid female whose species resembled Earth insects scaled up to human size. Her people were natural climbers and could see into ultraviolet spectrums that other species missed. Thoric was a Corvani male, part of a species known for their incredible sense of smell and their ability to track almost anything across any terrain. Squad 7, Crickstal continued, looking directly at Maya's group. Your mission is to reach Checkpoint Alpha, establish a defensive position, and hold it for 24 hours. The checkpoint is located 40 kilometers from your drop point. You must cross jungle terrain, river systems, and a mountain pass. You will encounter obstacles both natural and artificial. Zarath leaned forward in her seat. What kind of artificial obstacles? The kind that will test whether you can handle unexpected problems, the sergeant replied. Remember, this is not a survival camping trip. This is military training. Act accordingly. The transport landed with a heavy thud in a cleared area that barely qualified as a landing zone. Trees pressed in from all sides, their canopies so thick that only scattered beams of sunlight reached the ground. The air that rushed in when the doors opened was thick and hot, carrying smells of rotting vegetation and unfamiliar life forms. Maya shouldered her pack and checked her equipment one final time. Each cadet carried standard field gear including food for 3 days, water purification tablets, basic medical supplies, and a communication device for true emergencies only. They also had training weapons, though Maya hoped they would not need them. Squad 7, move out, Crickstal ordered. Your time starts now. Maya's squad left the landing zone and entered the jungle proper. Within minutes, the sounds of other squads faded away, replaced by the alien noises of Kalos 7. Strange birds called from the canopy above. Something large moved through the underbrush nearby, but stayed out of sight. The humidity made every breath feel thick and heavy. Zarath took the lead position, using her natural strength to push through thick vegetation. Lisa walked second, using a handheld scanner to track their route and identify potential hazards. Maya positioned herself third, where she could observe both the terrain ahead and the squad's formation. Marcus, Nixara, and Thoric brought up the rear. For the first hour, they made good progress. The jungle was challenging but not impossible to navigate. Maya noted several plants that matched her research, confirming that her preparation was accurate. She also spotted signs of animal activity, including claw marks on trees and trails through the underbrush, but nothing that seemed immediately threatening. Water ahead, Lisa announced, consulting her scanner. Looks like a river crossing. emerged from the jungle onto the bank of a fast-moving river about 20 meters wide. The water was brown with sediment and moved too quickly to see the bottom. On the far side, the jungle continued unbroken. "Can we go around?" Marcus asked nervously. Thoric sniffed the air carefully. "River runs north and south for many kilometers. Crossing here saves us hours of walking." "Then we cross," Zareth said. She began looking for a good spot to enter the water. Maya studied the river more carefully. The current was strong, but she could see a line of rocks that formed natural stepping stones about 50 meters downstream. The crossing would require balance and timing, but it was safer than trying to swim against the current. "There," she said, pointing to the rocks. "We can jump from stone to stone." "Those rocks look slippery," Lisa said. "Better than fighting the current," Maya replied. "And if someone falls, the current will carry them to the shallow area on the far side rather than deeper water." Zareth looked at both options and nodded. "Good thinking. Maya leads the crossing." Maya felt surprised by the acknowledgement, but she did not comment. She led the squad to the line of rocks and studied the spacing between them. The jumps were challenging but manageable if they were careful. "One at a time," Maya said. "Wait until the person ahead reaches the far side before starting. If someone falls, do not try to catch them. Let the current take them to the shallows and help them there." Maya jumped to the first rock, found her balance, and continued across. The stones were slippery as Lisa had predicted, but they provided enough grip for careful movement. She reached the far side without incident and waved for the next person to start. Lisa crossed successfully, followed by Nixara, whose insect-like limbs gave her excellent balance on the wet rocks. Thoric made it across despite his larger size, and Marcus managed the crossing, though he looked terrified the entire time. Zareth came last. She jumped confidently from rock to rock, her warrior training evident in her smooth movements. She was 3 stones from safety when something went wrong. Maya saw Zareth's foot slip on a particularly wet rock. The hegemony warrior windmilled, her arms trying to regain balance, but momentum carried her into the fast-moving water. The current swept Zareth downstream immediately. She tried to swim against it, but the river was too strong. Maya could see her being carried toward a section where the water moved faster and deeper. Without thinking, Maya ran along the riverbank, tracking Zareth's progress. She reached a point where a fallen tree extended partway into the water and dove in without hesitation. The current grabbed her immediately, but she had timed her entry to intersect with Zareth's path. Maya reached Zareth just as the alien warrior was starting to panic. "Stop fighting the current," Maya shouted over the noise of rushing water. "Let it carry us to the shallow area." "I cannot swim in this," Zareth gasped. "You do not need to swim. Just hold on to me and keep your head up." Maya wrapped one arm around Zareth and used the other to guide them toward the riverbank. The current was powerful, but Maya had studied the water flow and knew where it would take them. They were carried nearly 100 meters downstream. Before reaching water shallow enough to stand in, both women struggled to the bank, soaked and exhausted. The rest of the squad caught up with them quickly, having run along the riverbank during the rescue. "That was stupid," Zareth said, breathing hard. "You could have drowned trying to save me, but I did not," Maya replied. "And neither did you." Zareth looked at Maya with an expression she had never shown before. There was respect in her eyes, mixed with confusion. The proud warrior was not used to being rescued, especially by someone she had considered weak. "Thank you," Zareth said quietly. Maya nodded and began checking her gear for water damage. "We should keep moving. We have lost time." The squad resumed their journey with a different dynamic than before. Zareth no longer made dismissive comments about Maya's capabilities. The other squad members seemed to pay more attention to Maya's suggestions. Even Marcus appeared less nervous, as if seeing Maya take decisive action had given him confidence. They traveled through the afternoon, making steady progress toward their objective. The jungle presented constant challenges, including steep slopes, thick vegetation, and areas where the canopy blocked so much light that they needed flashlights to see. Maya continued to navigate carefully, using her research to avoid the most dangerous areas. As evening approached, they reached the base of the mountain pass they needed to cross. The trail was steep and rocky, winding up the mountainside through increasingly sparse vegetation. Maya estimated they had climbed about halfway when Thoric suddenly stopped and raised his hand for silence. "Something is wrong," the Corvani said, his nose twitching as he tested the air. "There are predators nearby, many of them." Maya felt her pulse quicken. She had read about the predators of Kalo 7, but encountering them was different from studying them in files. The pack leader stepped closer, its massive paws silent on the rocky ground. Maya could see every detail of the creature in the harsh beam of her flashlight. Its fur was thick and dark, scarred from years of hunting and fighting. Its claws were as long as her fingers and curved like daggers. But it was the intelligence in those yellow eyes that made her stomach tighten with fear. The beast was studying them, looking for weaknesses. Maya realized it was trying to decide which member of the squad would be easiest to separate from the group. Her research had mentioned that Kilos hunters preferred to isolate single targets rather than attack a defensive formation directly. "Nobody move," Zareth whispered. "Let them make the first move." Maya wanted to disagree. Waiting gave the hunters more time to position themselves for an attack. But she also knew that sudden movements might trigger the assault they were all dreading. She kept her training weapon pointed at the lead hunter while her mind raced through possible solutions. The mountain path was narrow, with steep rock walls on one side and a dangerous drop on the other. There was no room to maneuver and nowhere to retreat. 8 hunters surrounded them, moving with the patience of experienced predators. Maya counted at least 3 that were larger than earth lions, and the pack leader was bigger than any land predator she had ever seen. A sound from above made everyone look up. 2 more hunters had climbed onto the rock outcropping overhead, giving them a perfect position to drop down on the squad. 10 hunters total. The odds were getting worse by the minute. "This is bad," Marcus whispered. His voice shook with terror, and Maya could see his hands trembling as he held his weapon. "Training weapons will not stop them," Nixara said quietly. The mantid's large eyes reflected the available light, giving her better vision than the others in the darkness. "Energy pulses might stun them briefly, but they are too large to be disabled." Maya knew Nixara was right. The training weapons were designed to eliminate other cadets wearing sensor equipment, not to fight actual predators. They were essentially useless in this situation, except possibly as a distraction. "Then we use the terrain," Maya said, studying their surroundings. "One more time. If we can get them to attack from only one direction, we have a better chance." "How?" Lisa asked. Maya pointed to a gap between 2 large boulders about 10 meters away. "There. It is narrow enough that they cannot surround us, and they would have to come at us one at a time." "We will never reach it," Thoric said. "They will attack as soon as we move." "Not all of us," Maya said, "but maybe some of us." Zareth understood immediately. "You want to split up. Some of us run for the gap while others provide distraction." "It is our best option," Maya replied. "No," Marcus said, his voice rising in panic. "We stay together. That is what they taught us in survival training." "Survival training assumed we would have real weapons," Maya pointed out. "This situation is different." The pack leader suddenly raised its head and let out a howling call that echoed off the mountain walls. The other hunters responded immediately, moving into new positions. The pack was preparing to attack. "Decide now," Zareth ordered. "Who runs and who stays?" Maya looked around the squad. Lisa was their navigator and pilot, valuable for completing the mission. Nixara could climb better than any of them and might be able to escape if things went wrong. Marcus was too scared to be reliable in a fight, but he might survive if he could reach safety. Thoric was strong and could handle himself. That left Maya and Zareth to provide the distraction. "Lisa, Nixara?" "And Marcus run for the gap," Maya said. "Thoric, Zareth, and I will give you time to get there." "I should be the one staying," Lisa protested. "I can handle myself in a fight." "You can handle yourself in a cockpit," Maya replied. "We need you alive to complete the mission." The pack leader took another step forward. Several of the other hunters were now crouched low, their muscles bunched for a spring attack. Time was running out. "On my signal," Zareth said. 3, 2, 1, go. Lisa, Nixara, and Marcus broke from the defensive circle and ran toward the gap between the boulders. Immediately, 3 hunters moved to intercept them. Maya fired her training weapon at the nearest one, the energy pulse causing it to stumble, but not fall. Zareth and Thoric added their fire, forcing the hunters to dodge rather than pursue. The distraction worked for about 5 seconds. Then the pack leader decided that 3 targets were getting away and charged directly at Zareth, clearly intending to eliminate the strongest-looking member of the remaining group before chasing the runners. Maya saw what was happening and knew that Zareth would not be able to dodge in time. The hunter was too close and moving too fast. In less than 2 seconds, 400 kilograms of muscle and claws would slam into the hegemony warrior and likely kill her instantly. Time seemed to slow down as Maya watched the massive creature bear down on her squadmate. She could see every detail of its approach, the way its powerful legs drove it forward, the way its claws extended for maximum damage, the way its jaws opened to reveal teeth like daggers. She could also see Zareth's eyes widening in shock as she realized she could not avoid the attack. Maya moved without thinking. She dropped her useless weapon and threw herself between Zareth and the charging hunter. The creature was too committed to its attack to change direction, so it slammed into Maya instead of its intended target, but instead of being crushed by the impact, Maya did something that defied everything her squadmates thought they knew about human capabilities. As the hunter's momentum carried it toward her, she grabbed the creature by its massive shoulders and used its own speed against it. Maya planted her feet, twisted her entire body, and redirected the hunter's charge into a throw that sent the 400-kilogram predator sailing through the air. The beast flew nearly 3 meters before hitting the rocky ground with a thunderous crash that echoed across the mountainside. The entire pack froze in shock. Even the other hunters stopped their pursuit of Lisa's group to stare at what had just happened. A small human had just thrown their pack leader like it weighed nothing. Maya stood in the same spot where she had made the throw, breathing hard but still ready to fight. Her hands were scraped from gripping the hunter's coarse fur, but she showed no other signs of injury. She looked down at the pack leader, which was struggling to get back to its feet, clearly dazed by the unexpected flight. "How?" Zareth whispered. She stared at Maya with an expression of complete amazement. Maya did not answer immediately. She was watching the pack leader and the other hunters, trying to determine if they would continue the attack or retreat. The throw had been desperate, born from the need to save her squadmate, but she knew it would not be enough to drive off the entire pack. The pack leader finally regained its feet, shaking its massive head to clear the confusion. It looked at Maya with what could only be described as newfound respect. The creature had hunted for years and had never encountered prey that could match its strength. It was reassessing the situation. "The throw was good," Thoric said quietly, "but there are still 9 more of them." Maya nodded. The throw had bought them time and possibly saved Zareth's life, but their situation was still desperate. She looked toward the gap where Lisa, Nixara, and Marcus had taken shelter. They had reached safety, but they were too far away to help. "We need another plan," Maya said. The pack leader suddenly let out another howling call, but this one was different. From the first, instead of a hunting cry, it sounded like a retreat signal. The other hunters looked at their leader with obvious confusion, but they began backing away from the remaining squad members. "They are leaving," Zareth said in disbelief. Maya watched the hunters disappear into the darkness between the rocks. She could not believe it either. Packs like this did not give up easily, especially when they outnumbered their prey. But something about her throw had changed the pack leader's calculation. "Predators are practical," she said, thinking out loud. "If prey becomes too dangerous to hunt safely, they look for easier targets." "You think throwing their leader convinced them we are too dangerous?" Thoric asked. "Maybe, or maybe the pack leader decided that losing more hunters was not worth the risk." Zareth continued to stare at Maya. That creature weighed 400 kilograms. How did you throw it like that? Maya looked down at her hands. They were still shaking slightly from adrenaline. Leverage, timing, and desperation, she said. Plus, it was moving fast when it hit me. I just redirected its momentum. That is not possible, Zareth said. No human should be able to do that. Humans do impossible things when we have to, Maya replied. We are better at that than most people think. Lisa's voice came from the gap between the boulders. Is it safe to come out? Maya looked around the mountainside one more time. The hunters were gone, at least for now? Yes, but we should keep moving. They might come back with a larger pack. The squad regrouped and continued up the mountain path. The remaining climb to the pass was completed in silence, each member lost in their own thoughts about what they had witnessed. Maya had not just saved Zareth's life. She had done something that seemed physically impossible for someone her size. When they finally reached the top of the pass, Zareth H. stopped and turned to face Maya directly. I owe you my life, she said formally. I will not forget this debt. The transport ship lifted off from Kalo 7 3 days later, carrying tired but successful cadets back to Nexus Prime. Maya sat in the same seat she had occupied on the trip down, but everything felt different now. The other cadets kept glancing at her when they thought she was not looking. Some whispered among themselves, their conversations stopping whenever she got too close. The news of what happened on the mountain had spread through all 7 squads before they even reached their objectives. Helmet camera footage did not lie, and the recording of Maya throwing a 400-kilogram predator had been watched dozens of times by cadets who could not believe what they were seeing. How does it feel to be famous? Lisa asked quietly. She sat next to Maya again, but her tone carried a respect that had not been there before. Uncomfortable, Maya replied honestly. She had never wanted attention, and becoming the subject of whispered conversations made her feel exposed in ways she did not like. Get used to it, Lisa said. Word is already spreading back at the academy. By the time we land, everyone will know about the throw. Maya looked out the window at the stars. She had completed the mission successfully. Her squad had reached their objective and held it for the required time, and everyone had returned safely. By any measure, the exercise had been a success. But she knew that the throw would overshadow everything else, Cadet Collins. Sergeant Crickstall's voice cut through the ambient noise of the transport. Report to the front of the cabin. Maya unbuckled her harness and walked forward, feeling the weight of 42 pairs of eyes following her movement. The sergeant stood near the pilot compartment, his forearms crossed and his expression unreadable. Sir, Maya said, coming to attention, at ease. Crickstall studied her face for a long moment. I have reviewed the footage from your squad's encounter with the hunter pack. I have also read the reports from your teammates. I want to hear your version of events. Maya had been expecting this conversation since they left Kalo 7. We were surrounded by hunters on the mountain pass. I made a tactical decision to split the squad, with half running for defensive positions while the rest provided distraction. When the pack leader charged Cadet Zareth, I intercepted the attack. You intercepted a 400-kilogram predator by throwing it 3 meters through the air, Crickstall said flatly. Yes, sir. How? Maya considered her answer carefully. She had been asking herself the same question for 3 days. The creature was moving fast when it reached me. I used its momentum against it. Humans learn techniques for redirecting force rather than meeting it directly. That is a significant understatement of what occurred, the sergeant said. I have been training military personnel for 30 years. I have seen cadets from species with natural strength far superior to humans. None of them could have done what you did. Perhaps they never had to, sir. Crickstall's head tilted slightly. Explain. Other species have natural advantages. They are stronger, faster, or tougher than humans. They can rely on those gifts in dangerous situations. Humans have to find other ways to survive. We adapt. And you believe this adaptation allows humans to exceed their apparent physical limitations? Maya thought about her answer. I think humans do whatever is necessary when the stakes are high enough. We change what we can, accept what we cannot change, and find ways around everything else. The sergeant was quiet for several seconds. Maya could hear the hum of the ship's engines and the quiet conversations of other cadets behind her. Finally, Crystal spoke again. When we return to the academy, you will be reassigned to advanced tactical training. Your performance on Kalo 7 suggests you have potential that standard cadet programs cannot develop properly. Sir, I am not sure I want special treatment. This is not special treatment, Cadet Collins. This is recognition that you have demonstrated capabilities that require different training approaches. You will work with instructors who specialize in unconventional warfare and adaptive tactics. Maya felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. Advanced training meant opportunities to learn skills that few cadets ever accessed. It also meant more attention and higher expectations. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Do not thank me yet, Crystal said. Advanced training is significantly more demanding than standard programs. Some cadets find they prefer the certainty of conventional approaches. We shall see how you respond to real challenges. Maya returned to her seat wondering what advanced training would involve. She had assumed that completing the field exercise successfully would lead to more of the same type of instruction. Being selected for specialized programs changed everything. What did he want? Lisa asked. Advanced training assignment, Maya said quietly. Lisa's eyes widened. Seriously, that is incredible? Only the top few % of cadets get invited to advanced programs. It is just training, Maya said, but even as she spoke the words, she knew they were not entirely true. Advanced training was recognition that she had potential beyond what anyone had expected when she arrived at the academy. 3 months ago, the transport docked at Nexus Prime 6 hours later. As the cadets disembarked, Maya noticed that word of the field exercise had indeed spread throughout the academy. Cadets from other classes stopped their conversations to watch her walk past. Some pointed openly while others tried to be more subtle about their curiosity. Maya collected her gear and headed toward her quarters, hoping to avoid further attention. She had taken only a few steps when she heard her name being called. Maya, Zareth approached with an expression Maya had never seen before. The hegemony warrior looked almost uncomfortable, as if she were about to do something that went against her nature. Zareth, Maya replied. I wanted to speak with you before the news spreads further. Zareth paused, seeming to gather her thoughts. My people have a tradition. When someone saves your life in battle, they become your battle sister. It is a bond that lasts forever. Maya did not know how to respond. Hegemony culture was built around concepts of honor and obligation that she did not fully understand. I did what anyone would have done. No, Zareth said firmly. You did what a warrior would have done. You put yourself at risk to save another member of your unit. That makes you worthy of respect. I am not a warrior, Maya said. I am just a cadet who got lucky. Luck does not throw a 400-kilogram predator, Zareth replied. Skill does that. Courage does that. These are warrior qualities regardless of what species you belong to. Other cadets were beginning to gather around them, drawn by the unusual sight of Zareth speaking respectfully to someone she had previously dismissed. Maya could feel their attention like a weight pressing down on her. Thank you, she said quietly. That means a lot coming from you. Zareth nodded once and walked away, leaving Maya standing alone in the corridor with dozens of cadets staring at her. She hurried toward her quarters, hoping to find some privacy to process everything that had happened, but privacy was not to be found. Over the following days, Maya discovered that her life at the academy had changed completely. Instructors who had barely noticed her before began asking for her opinions during tactical discussions. Cadets who had ignored her attempts at conversation now sought her out for advice. Even Jake Morrison, who had been openly dismissive of her quiet approach, began treating her with grudging respect. The attention was overwhelming. Maya had spent her entire life being overlooked or underestimated. She was not sure how to handle suddenly being seen as exceptional. Advanced training began a week later, in a specialized facility that most cadets never entered. Maya found herself working with instructors who had served in actual combat situations, learning techniques that were not taught in standard military curriculum. The training was intense, demanding, and exactly what she had been hoping for without realizing it. Adaptation is survival, her primary instructor explained during the first session. Conventional tactics work when you have conventional advantages. When you do not, you must find other ways to achieve your objectives. Maya absorbed the lessons eagerly. She learned about asymmetric warfare, about using enemy strengths against them, about finding opportunities in situations that seemed hopeless. She also learned that her throw on Kalos VII had not been luck or desperation alone. It had been the result of 3 months of unconscious preparation, of studying alien anatomy and movement patterns, of developing techniques specifically designed to work despite human physical limitations. You have been training for that moment. Without knowing it, her instructor said after reviewing footage of the incident, every observation you made, every technique you practiced, every piece of information you gathered contributed to your ability to act when the situation demanded it. Maya began to understand that her quiet nature had not been a weakness or a character flaw. It had been preparation. While other cadets focused on displaying their abilities, she had been developing them. While they competed for attention, she had been learning how to be effective. 3 months later, Maya stood at the front of a classroom filled with new cadets, preparing to assist with their first tactical lesson. She wore the insignia of an advanced training graduate and carried the confidence that came from knowing she had earned her place through demonstrated ability rather than natural advantages.